Welcome to day 2 of understanding the politics and culture of Europe. So we've all scrolled over to the right and we found the mini lesson, which is going to be here. And we will be using these 2 columns, the Protestant Reformation and political life, understanding absolute monarchs. So starting with the Protestant Reformation. We have a quick review to remind ourselves how powerful the Catholic Church was during the Middle Ages and that it controlled the cultural and social lives of people during the Middle Ages, and that because the Bible was written in Latin, only clergy members and priests are the ones who could read and interpret it. So they were the ones who were putting their spin on what the Bible said, which doesn't really make the Bible accessible for the entire public. Here's my audio recording of this reminder of what the Catholic Church was like. And because the Bible was not accessible to the masses during this time period, this sparks the Protestant Reformation. And the Protestant Reformation is started by a Catholic monk by the name of Martin Luther. He thought that it wasn't right that there was only a certain group of people who could read the Bible. So you can see in more detail here when you listen more of what Martin Luther did. You can also watch this video, which does a nice job of illustrating this reading, and it also explains what Martin Luther did. Just to put this into a visual though, so this is a timeline, the 300s marking way back when sort of the Middle Ages started, and this timeline up to here is Europe under one unified Catholic Church. And then in 1517, this is when the Protestant Reformation happened and the Catholic Church has now split and now there's different sects. And this is a picture or an illustration of Martin Luther. He nailed his 95 Theses to the door, which you can learn more about in this video. Now, moving on to political life, absolute monarchs ruled in most parts of European countries. So as we learned yesterday, we know that the Renaissance was sparked because of trade, okay? And that trading was happening during the Age of Exploration. The people that were in power during this time, the kings and the queens in power during this time, they're referred to as absolute monarchs. And the reason they're referred to as absolute monarchs is because they had power over everything. And this graphic right here, it's titled Some Characteristics of an Autocrat. An autocrat is another word for an absolute monarch. So you can see that, for example, the ruler has decides what the laws are. They control the religious authorities. They control the army, so on and so forth. So again, an autocrat is just another word for an absolute monarch, which then brings us to this idea of divine right. So in this image, we can see Charles I, that he is being crowned by God, and there's this dark cloud up in the right-hand corner, and then we can see a hand, and there's a crown, and then there's some sort of light that's sort of shining on Charles I, and he's like, oh my God, you know, I'm the king, I have divine right, God has given me this power. So, you know, an example of absolute rule, and how does absolute monarch and divine right, how do these two things go together? So what it really comes down to is that this is what it really boils down to, is that since people believe the king received his authority from God, that really means that the king had the right to rule completely and totally without the approval from the people. The king was God's representative on earth, and only God could judge the king. So the king and the queen in an absolute monarchy were basically untouchable. They had a lot of power.